as one of the best teams in the country last year, Texas kind of took the country by storm, with a really talented set of receivers, a great offensive line, a really nice defense. And yeah, you lose a lot of pieces. And I think the first instinct for a lot of people is like, oh my gosh, Texas, they're going to take a step back. But CD, like, I'm looking at this roster and like, I have a really tough time finding a hole on this roster.
Yeah, they've done just such a good job. You talk about building a program the right way. Sarkisian took a lot of flack those first couple years, losing games they shouldn't have, but a lot of it was just part of the process and getting his guys into the program. And boy, oh boy, does this look like a legit college football contender. You go up and down this roster at every position, positions of value. Like even when you talk about them losing draft picks here and here, it's just they're becoming into that status of where Georgia is at and where Alabama was at for the longest time, where you just have blind faith that they're going to churn out position after position after position of a highly rated recruit that hits, man. And they've done such a good job identifying talent, stockpiling talent at positions of need. I mean, I look at this roster, and normally we're talking about Texas and Georgia and Ohio State teams of this kind of caliber. We're going to be very nitpicky. So just understand that too, because their expectation is national title or bust, right? That's what we're at here with Texas. And you go up and down this roster, and outside of quarterback, because that's the case for just about every team in the country, you are not really an injury or two away from crippling this roster, and they have done such a good job. So hats off to Sarkisian. I will also say too, last year we talked about this team and their schedule being one of the lighter ones, turning out to be one of the lighter ones in college football, especially with how Michigan looked at the beginning of the year.
Relative to the SEC schedules that you'd see across the conference.
Yes. Thank you. But this one here, I think it's going to be really fun. I think you're going to learn a lot in those first 5 or 6 games from Texas, and as they get into some of their deeper parts too, with Georgia, Arkansas, and A&M to finish off November. So, and obviously you're expecting Texas to be playing December football. So yeah, I'm all for it here. I'm ready and excited to talk about Texas and see what they can do this year.
Yeah. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Arch Manning at quarterback. People are really excited about him. Still has a lot to prove, I think, but in the limited playing time that he's had, against maybe, albeit some weaker competition, ULM and Mississippi State last year, like he played fairly well. And Quinn Ewers, it's not like he was a superstar the whole time that he was there, operating as the quarterback at Texas. And you just have, so much talent surrounding Arch Manning. Like it's hard to picture. I get why he's the Heisman favorite. I get why people are projecting him to be so good because like he does have the talent around him to make him even better, and like just unlocking that from Arch Manning. It's clear that Steve Sarkisian's made it an emphasis to surround his quarterbacks with elite talent. And the thing is, though, it's like they've gone to the portal the last couple of years to go get guys in the wide receiver room and stuff like that, but they really only got one guy to add to that wide receiver room, albeit a great one. But I think they're loving what they're doing on the recruiting side for these skill positions. I mean, a running back, Wisner and Baxter and Gibson as your top 3. Just those top 2 alone is easily one of the better duos, in the SEC for sure.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm excited to see a healthy CJ Baxter, hopefully. Obviously, the emergence of Quintravian Wisner, not only as a important player, but also a leader in your locker room. And then we'll see how the development of Jarrett Gibson comes along too. So it's a fun one. And I will say, you have to kind of talk about the added dimension that Arch Manning does give you when he does run the football. At 6'4", 225 pounds, he can give you that. Now, I do think this year, I'm sure they're going to be a little bit more careful with him running the football than they were last year, knowing that they had Quinn Ewers as their starter, right? But with Arch Manning, I think potentially the backups are a little bit less experienced than you would like to see there. But yeah, it's going to be a fun rushing attack. Obviously, the offensive line, which we'll talk about later on, will play a big role in that. But I don't know, man. It's a fun one, and especially you get a healthy CJ Baxter, kind of returning to form, living up to that 5-star billing. It'll be exciting to see that wide receiver room, though, right? he let's just address the elephant in the room. They did lose a lot. Like Isaiah Bond, even though he didn't produce like what we thought he would, in this offense. Amari Niblack not producing like we thought in this offense. But Matthew Golden was a star, was an absolute star for you last year. Silas Bolden made some big time plays, especially in that playoff game against Arizona State, right? So you're replacing those guys. But man, do you still feel pretty good about what's left in this room? Not only the returning talent, DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo, a couple guys that came on as the season went on, guys that have been highly recruited in the past, but you bring over Emmett Mosley, right, from Stanford, which is a really nice get. Khalil Lockett, a guy that's just really, really a highly rated recruit. Jamie French, Dylan McCutcheon, like boy, oh boy, is this a fun group to just salivate over and imagine Arch Manning sitting back there and picking his poison and also being in that room for Sarkisian when he's drawing up plays for these guys that he does such a good job of getting his best players in space and utilizing all the talent he has. How are you feeling about this room?
Yeah, I feel great about it. Matthew Golden too. Thing with him, like they didn't really unlock him until like the last couple weeks of that regular season, and then that playoff run that they had and postseason. Like, yeah, he was phenomenal. But like DeAndre Moore is so underrated, man. He just finds the end zone. He finds ways to get open. He's really good. Brian Wingo, we know, is just an absolute stud. Just what a recruiting win for Texas to get him. And then obviously, like Texas has had a history of true freshman wide receivers playing significantly and playing well, which I think the case can be for Khalil Lockett. And then Emmett Mosley, like if you're, a national college football fan and you heard anything about Stanford and then their, fall camps, like a year ago, like Emmett Mosley was the talk of the town, when it comes to like guys that are sneakily incredible, guys that are dominating practice. Like Emmett Mosley, you look at him and you're like, oh, he only had 500 yards for Stanford. Yeah, as a true freshman in an offense that struggled. And I mean, you got size, you got speed in this room. I I like this wide receiver room a lot, and I think people will be quick to dismiss it because of, like you said, Golden Isaiah Bond being gone, and Silas Bolden. I didn't think was much of an impact last year. Special teams wise, I guess he was, but yeah, I would not be surprised, CD, if this wide receiver room turned out to produce more than last year's wide receiver room. And I know that sounds like a super hot take, and it is. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think it's actually unlikely that it does, but I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, you got to put some respect on some of those guys and what they bring to the table with the offensive line. So obviously, this was a strength of your team last year. We talked about it ad nauseum. I feel like, and every time you talked about Texas, you had to bring up this offensive line because of how good they were, right, and how deep they were. You saw it in the NFL draft, obviously come to fruition, and you lose a lot of those guys, but you still have a really, really good starting five that you're able to trot out there thanks to your recruiting and how well you've done supplementing, and developing guys to getting them ready to play because you saw those guys having to play last year. You had some injuries at tackle, injuries in the interior as well, in some big spots, and you saw guys come out ready to play.
Yeah, and the thing is, the depth I know is maybe a concern to some people, but I think it somewhat was a concern last year. Not like the second and third guys, but like beyond that. The thing is about Sarkisian and this coaching staff and what they've been able to do. I wouldn't be surprised if like some of these guys are ready to play and we just don't know, right? Because we haven't seen them out there. Texas is one of those teams, like Georgia is one of those teams, Alabama is one of those teams where you just like kind of expect like people behind these guys on the offensive line. And, in this era, right, it's harder to have offensive lineman depth than it ever has been, right? And I think it's somewhat there. I'm sure Texas fans would rather feel better than they do probably right now, but you're still projecting some of these guys as starters, to get better as well. But I do think that this is still going to be one of the better offensive lines in the SEC. Will it be the best one? I don't think so. That's not my prediction, but it could definitely happen, and it could end up being one of the better ones in the entire country because you see like a kind of a different level of athlete across the board on this Longhorn offensive line.
Yeah, yeah. I will say I am one that is a little bit more concerned about depth. I did mention at the beginning of the video about how they're not really an injury away from really crippling this team. I do wonder if at tackle, especially on that left side, um, if you do get to a spot where maybe you do see a significant downturn. I think that's kind of highlighted by the injury. It sounds like a season-long injury to your what probably would be your swing tackle and Andre Cajo, in-state kid from Texas, out a couple cycles ago. But that's kind of where we're at here. Those five guys are maybe not as experienced as the team last year was, but you've got some returning pieces with Hudson and Campbell, and then you've got talented pieces who have experience with Baker and Gooseby, and then Umio Zulu, right, who's also played significant amount of snaps too. So it's a fun group here, and obviously you talked about how the depth, and you almost just trust those guys to have SEC level bodies and replacement level bodies behind them. I do think if you're going to get to a spot where you're competing in December and you're down to your third tackle or your third guard, I do think that can be a spot where maybe you see some trouble with Texas, but boy, oh boy, is this a pretty good unit on the surface, especially in week one. Well, they'll be tested against definitely a new Ohio State defensive line, but a very talented one nonetheless.
Although you got to wonder though, there is not a single offensive lineman on this roster that is a transfer. So
That's incredible.
that's nuts. That's a testament to their recruiting. It's also maybe a testament to the belief that they have in the guys that are behind, these starters. So I
What
think it's fair to like doubt sort of the depth of this offensive line from a macro outsider's perspective. But if we're talking about what the coaching staff believes, clearly they didn't go get anyone because there were some good offensive linemen in the portal. There were some decent ones and some guys that definitely you could have added depth or whatever. It is hard to recruit on the offensive line when you're Texas though. When you got kind of a solid five, it's
I
harder
think
to
that's more
recruit that
of it.
offensive lineman depth in the transfer portal for guys that want to play. But yeah, I'm confident in this unit. And then at tight end, you got some really nice blockers over there. And Jack Endries, bringing him over from Cal as a pass catcher. You're going to have some nice guys like Spencer Shannon, Jordan Washington, kind of extensions of that offensive line. I like this group a lot. And we talked about this running back group. They're going to benefit a lot from this offensive line. I think Arch will as well.
Yeah, plucking Jack Endries in that spring portal was massive. And I know we talk about
Cherry on
tight
top.
end as that's what it is. It's more of an accessory piece if you do have an elite one and you can get by with serviceable, tight end play, which they would have had. But Endries had 56 receptions last year as a tight end at Cal. I know they threw the ball a ton, but I mean, yeah, with good reason was he that good, man. He's going to be definitely a Sunday kind of player in the future, in the near future for Texas. And to go from Jatavian Sanders to Gunnar Helm to Jack Endries, man, just embarrassment of riches, man. It's awesome that they just do such a good job with this roster management.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. On the defensive side of the ball, like this, yeah, this has the chance to be one of the better defensive units in the entire country. All right, we'll put that out there. The one thing that I was concerned about for Texas heading into 2024, I was like, man, you lose Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. Like, how are you going to replace that interior? You know, oh, sorry, we just have a guy named Alfred Collins that's like ready to go and like an absolute animal. All right, so Alfred Collins was spectacular in that spot, but it is clear that Texas made an emphasis because they didn't believe that they had, what they needed on the interior. They went and got six guys, five guys in the portal and then a 5-star defensive tackle. Like, they got six guys, new additions that they believe are going to have to participate on this interior defensive line. And these aren't like no-name guys from like the Sun Belt. We're talking about all Power 4 guys. Travis Shaw from North Carolina, Canu from Ohio State, Johnson from Maryland, Watson from Syracuse, and then Cole Brevard. I mean, you got good players here on the defensive line, defense tackle. Like, your edge group is spectacular, right? Ethan Burke and Colin Simmons, they're going to find ways to get to the quarterback. Trey Moore, is another guy from UTSA a year ago that's going to play some edge as well. You have really good edge rushers. All right, like it's going to be awesome. Your defensive tackles, if a couple of these guys hit, that's what's going to elevate you. And you've just seen the last couple of years the defensive tackle position get elevated year over year, and that's kind of what separated Texas a lot of times from some of these other teams in the SEC and in college football. It's like their defensive line has been very good over the last couple of years, and I kind of anticipate that continuing. You know, as long as some of these defensive tackle guys, like if they unlock some of these guys, like if they unlock Travis Shaw, I'm not saying that they would, but if they did, like oh my gosh, dude, this defensive line would be so nasty. I think it still will be really, really good.
Yeah, you could elevate that to. I mean, it's already one of the better groups in the country, but you're talking about elite status, game wrecking, down in and down out. Yeah, I mean, you talk about how many transfers they brought in and how telling it is that they saw it as a position of need, but it sounds like they're pretty happy with the moves that they made, with the scouting reports and the evaluations that they made in the portal, as well as with the high school ranks. Alex January is a guy that's coming back for you, one of the lone returners on that interior side. Be interested to see. You talked about Colin Simmons and Burke. How much of a jump does Simmons make? We saw him be really freaking good and twitchy, and him and Dylan Stewart were a lot of fun to watch in the SEC as true freshmen. How much can he jump, right? He was more of I think, a supplementary guy in terms of like you had Baron Sorrell and Ethan Burks, right? Guys that like were really nice, very good pieces for you that played a lot of snaps. And now like Simmons, it's his room here. He's going to be the focus on this defensive line that other teams will be scheming for. Can he still produce at an elite level? A lot of fun though. A lot of big names, and boy, oh boy, do they know how to construct a roster? Well done for the staff here. Staying in the front seven, that linebacker group, right? Obviously headlined by Anthony Hill. You bring over Brad Spence from Arkansas, who had a very solid year last year. Leona Lafau comes back as well. Ty Anthony Smith got his feet wet. What are you expecting from this group in terms of what you can see out of them and how they go about their business?
I mean, Anthony Hill is one of the better linebackers in the country. I think we can agree on that. So I think the hope for Texas is that he continues to grow and continue to be one of the more dominant forces at that position in college football. I think Brad Spence, dude, is really good. Like he was spectacular for Arkansas last year, and he is a bigger guy. He is super fast, a great tackler. He's really good. I think that was a massive loss for Arkansas. They were upset. And he's just another piece for this Texas linebacker group. You know, like he might not even start. Like, I don't know what, you know, who knows what they're going to do with Brad Spence here, but I will know that he'll get at least, 300 snaps. And I know that those are going to be very valuable 300 snaps. So this is a very good unit that's going to be even amplified more by this defensive line. Especially if those defensive tackles take a step like you want them to if you're a Texas fan. And then those edge rushers are just so good. I mean, this front seven's awesome. It's one of the better ones that I've seen in college football, in my opinion.
It also sounds like Spence has that versatility to play on the line too. Like, have his hand in the dirt, kind of backing up at that buck linebacker spot off the edge. But yeah, I think that's part of it where you get versatility. He can back up Colin Simmons. He can back up Anthony Hill and Lafau. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun. Sounds like Trey Moore is also moving from edge to linebacker, which is intriguing, as I thought he was pretty darn good off the edge for his whole career. But again, that's obviously a staff that I trust in what they do in their evaluations and development and what they see. Yeah, it's a fun group, man. And I think if you're sandwiched between like a very good front and a very good secondary, you could have guys that are potential playmakers like Hill and Lafau, right? And you could see this group potentially elevate this defense from a great one to like an elite one, right? So that's a lot of fun.
Then the secondary, I mean, You lose Jade Barron, who was a first round player. I mean, he was awesome. You lose Andrew Makuba. I mean, those guys are really good, but Taft sticking around, Malik Muhammad, Jelani McDonald, Kobe Black. I mean, there are names in this secondary that you really like to see. And not to mention, again, it's gonna be a lot easier, to play in that secondary when your boys up front are getting after the quarterback so consistently. So this is like a as deep of a secondary as it gets. I think the top level talent is also there for the most part, but this is just a very good unit as well. I mean, again, no holes on this team at all. There's no holes.
Yeah, Derek Williams, a guy that I'm excited to see back. Hopefully healthy too. We saw him obviously go down. I think in that Oklahoma game, Tafai or is it Taffy? Michael Taffy, McDonald, Derek Williams. Like that's just a lot of fun. What they can do, versatility, rotating guys in and out. Again, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again about all these position groups: is the versatility, the talent, and the depth, and no portal acquisitions at all in this group. Here, it was literally just even though you lose first rounder Jade Barron, even though you lose Makuba, right? It don't matter. We're just going to replace, trust our evals, trust our development, and plug and play guys that are just really, really good. Malik Muhammad's the guy. So obviously Michael Taffy and Derek Williams are monsters, especially if Williams can come back healthy. I want to see Muhammad take a step in terms of like be an elite dominant corner. Like I think he's got the potential to. I think we've seen it in spurts. I think a lot's going to be placed upon him. And I wonder if he's the guy that rises to the top of a very talented group, a very deep group, and he be a star for them and potentially, obviously, move his way into first round conversations. Similarly, in a different way, the Jade Barron obviously playing different positions and different play styles, but it would be awesome to see Muhammad take a monster step for them.
Yeah, and the special teams. I mean, Mason Shipley, like what? I mean, one of the better kickers in college football last year. And then on top of that, you bring in a Utah transfer at punter that you're pretty confident in. So, and then DeAndre Moore as a returner, or whoever you're going to stick, literally whoever you
Yeah.
want to stick back there, I'm sure will be fine because you got plenty of guys that can do that. And so, yeah, you have this offense that doesn't have any holes. I guess unproven quarterback, a couple of things you're projecting on the offensive line, sure, whatever. Defensively, like maybe you're concerned about all the transfers that they had to bring in at defensive tackle, but if you're confident like a couple of them are going to hit, then boom. And the staff seems to be really confident in those guys. And then your special teams being really like it doesn't feel like there's a hole on this team at all. So when I'm looking at the schedule, you talked about it a little bit. It's a little bit tougher than last year's schedule because of the home road splits. Plus, you swap out Michigan and put in Ohio State there week 1 on the road. That'll be a tough game. So your over and win total is 9.5, way juiced to the over. I think the best odds you can get are like 175 minus 180, something like that. So if you're trying to get the 10 wins, like you can only lose 2 games, right? So you got to go to Georgia, you got to go to Florida, you got to go to Ohio State. All those are tough games, plus A&M at home. You are fortunate that you get Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Kentucky. You're one of 2 teams in the conference to get the fortune of playing the worst 4 teams in the SEC. But I think those higher end games on the road against Florida and Georgia, plus Oklahoma, you never know what's going to happen in that game, neutral site, and then A&M just being a rivalry game. I can see the concern from people being like, oh, they might not get the double digit wins. I don't see it being too much of a problem for them. I think that I think they'll beat most of these teams. Even if they lose to Ohio State, I think that they can go through this SEC schedule and only lose 1 game. Not easily, but man, this is a dang good team. I'll lean over. Not going to be a bet for me, but especially at that juice. But man, I think this is a really good football team for 2025, and understandably, they're the favorite to win the national championship. According to odds makers, they're the favorite to win the SEC. Understandably, for all the reasons that we just talked about.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the schedule. Even though it's definitely improved from last year, I like the way it sets up. I don't really see a gauntlet of a stretch. I mean, your hardest back-to-back games are at Florida and obviously neutral site against Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout. But it that's off a bye. Like there's a bye before that, and that's us after a stretch of playing San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston, which you can roll over, and obviously kind of beat with your second strings, in that second half a lot of times. So that's not bad. I guess you could look at Georgia, Arkansas, A&M and be a little bit physically beat up by the time you get to A&M, especially at the end of the season. But that's where your depth and attrition of Texas and their recruiting kind of comes in, where you feel pretty good about them. One last thing I will say about the out of conference is, and I know this isn't a huge thing, but this out of conference schedule is really intriguing. I think it sets up super well for this Texas team in terms of like, you don't care about going 12-0. 12-0 would be great. You want to win a title, right? And you want to prepare yourself to win a title. Obviously, that Ohio State game at Ohio State, week 1, like that's a heck of a test for Arch Manning, for a lot of the new guys you're breaking in on the offensive line, your wide receiver core, the defending national championships. Like it's going to be a heck of an environment there, an opportunity for Texas, even if they don't have to win that game, and that doesn't really affect how they're going to be, I think, in chances of making the playoffs. Although if you do lose to Ohio State, you do lose to Georgia, and you do lose to Florida, like 9-3 with maybe 1 or 2 quality wins is not going to get it done. But regardless, like I don't really see that being the case. I think you're going 10 wins and going to the playoffs. But even like San Jose State, they were like a top 10, top 5 passing offense last year with Walker Agette. He's coming back. UTEP with Scotty Waldron and Malachi Nelson. I think it's going to give you really, really like good looks on like self-scouting and being able to go back and adjust, as well as Phil Longo. I mean, say what you want about Phil Longo, but he's a guy that's played and coached a lot of Power 4 football and what he can do schematically. I just think it's a lot of fun with this team here and this schedule. Definitely going to be previewing Texas a handful of times, and obviously in December, which we think they're both going to get there playing meaningful football. I'll take the over 9.5 with you. It sucks that the juice is heavy, right? It's not like you're getting good odds there, but it is what it is, and I think that's for good reason that Vegas kind of understands that 10 wins is probably on the lower side of the floor of this roster. And then real quick, I want to mention a couple staff changes that they're having. So Dwayne Aquina, right, is coming in to be on that defensive staff, reuniting with Johnny Nansen, coming back to Texas. He's a guy that's been around for a long time. I know they didn't have the season they wanted last year at Arizona. A part of that was not having Johnny Nansen and your whole staff too. But he comes back. I think that's big for you. Chad Scott, it's a pretty darn good running backs coach from West Virginia, recruiting and developing guys. That's a lot of fun there. So, yeah, I mean, you got Flood back, you got Kwiatkowski, Jeff Banks, obviously Johnny Nansen, of course, Steve Sarkisian on the offense side. So it's still a heck of a coaching staff, man. A+ is all around. Obviously, for good reason, one of the favorites to win the title, no doubt. And it should be a really fun year for Texas. And unless no one said it yet, like Texas is back, man, and they are here to stay. And with the way that they are recruiting and developing guys, it's a factory right now with Sarkisian and how they're cooking down in Austin.
Yeah, or how about Alan Clark that you brought in from Ohio State? Or Mark Orphy, who was DB's coach over at Rutgers.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you haven't followed Rutgers football the last 4 years, they've pumped out some NFL talent in those rooms.
Yeah.
So, just on top of Chad Scott and Dwayne Aquina, I mean, those are the kind of hires that Texas is able to just go get, to fill out their coaching staff. It's pretty unbelievable. And the retention of Kyle Flood, Kwiatkowski, and Jeff Banks all being there for 5 seasons, for all 5 seasons that Steve Sarkisian's here. Unbelievable. Unbelievable that Kyle Flood and Kwiatkowski, they're probably getting calls at other places to be head coaches, but maybe it's only a matter of time, before those guys get looks at bigger programs.